Yeah, now we are.
Hello.
So this will probably be a little short episode, a little mini one, and we'll have maybe an interview out next episode. But for this one, we're just chilling, relaxing. Just paid my rent again. And we were talking about, I guess, in Theo's journey, how psychology and research and things like that relate to art making. And I guess there's a lot to recount because we just had a very detailed conversation about this. But before we start this, should we just drive aimlessly right now?
Yeah.
Okay, fuck it. But I guess the idea that I guess to talk about myself, I make art in such a way that I mean to be totally frank and transparent, I would love to be a famous artist. I would love to make money off of my art. I would love to be in museums and sell paintings for millions of dollars at auctions, and that's what
Don't get me wrong, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
I would love that.
Right. But for me, that I feel like I wake up every single day and I'm like, how am I going to get closer to that?
You have to.
That's my personal goal. But we were talking about how you have an alternative calling of that may even relate more to research and science and psychology.
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, so I'm gonna plug this real quick because it's happening tomorrow. But I'm presenting an artist talk on this. Actually,
well, it's happening the same day. So when you're done listening to this podcast, you can go tune into that.
Oh yeah, we're recording this right before.
So or stop this, check the time, go to this Zoom call.
3:30 Eastern time, I believe.
Yep.
I'll get
this posted in the morning.
Yeah, I'll post it. But long story short, I guess I've been reflecting a lot in writing this artist talk, which is
it's an artist talk at 3:30 tomorrow. Okay, cool.
Or 3.
Whatever.
I'll post it. You'll see
Cool.
But I'm doing my first artist talk, which is really exciting, really nerve-wracking. And it's the first time that, because I didn't graduate with my bachelor's yet, so I haven't had to present an artist talk in school. It's the first time that I'm actually talking about my work and analyzing maybe the reasons why I make it. And I think I'm coming up with some surprises because I, obviously, like I said before, would love to be famous and known in museums and have my work sell for millions of dollars. That would be sick. That would be great. But it's not really the reason that I make work. It's not the preliminary reason, because I think I'm really interested in something that I learned about maybe 3 years ago, that there was actually a name for this, called process art, or process-focused art making. And I've talked about that before on my Instagram and stuff, but essentially what that is the idea that you're making art with the focus, not the how do I phrase this? The focus is on the production of the piece and the experience for you of making it. That is the important thing. It doesn't mean that you're not making a piece that you're going to sell, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the piece is not good or that it's not going to turn out in a certain way that you were hoping, but you're not going into it necessarily with the plan of selling it. It's not...
Yeah, you're not making a product.
Exactly.
Or a commodity.
The inverse of that is product-focused art.
Got it.
So process versus product is something that I've been thinking about a lot for the last 3 years. That was kind of the cornerstone of my philosophy with Virago. And I think that something that's kind of toxic with the arts community, and why I've been involved in community organizing and stuff in the past, is that a lot of artists only do product sharing. You'll see someone's portfolio, you'll see finished pieces, you'll see prints, they'll give you a business card, you'll see them at markets. And that's all great, that's awesome. I don't think that those artists are illegitimate, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I also do that, and that's great, that's a rush. But it's not maybe the thing that I love the most. I think it's also really important in terms of community building and personal growth to have process sharing, sharing a studio with people, talking about why you do the things you do, where you get your supplies, what you're actually doing. Even thinking about things I have a friend who I actually would really love to have on the show. Her name's Haber. And she makes a lot of work with clay, and she talks about the tactile experience of working with the clay and how, regardless of what she's making, sometimes she doesn't have a plan for it even until it's done, but just getting into it and doing it is really helpful. That's something that's also a tool in an art therapist toolbox with working with kids or people with trauma, because it's a mindfulness exercise and it really grounds you. it's helpful for people that maybe don't know how to express something in particular. You ask them to just, for example, collage or use colors that they're drawn to. And then that finished piece, whatever it is, might give that therapist or counselor some insight on the headspace that person's in. I think something I didn't really necessarily realize that I was doing it with some intention, but hadn't really thought it through as much as I have been in the last few days, is applying that in a fine arts lens. I have a lot of work that is technically about a certain subject or a certain feeling, but I couldn't really give you a artist statement on the piece that isn't constantly changing because I didn't make it with an intended message. I didn't start it trying to say, this is how I feel about XYZ issue. A good example of that would be the big large-scale painting that I made on canvas over the past summer, AFAB, that technically I guess it's about gender and gender queerness and sexual harassment and the refractions of how you present to other people and how they reflect that back to you. But I didn't make it trying to say anything in particular about anybody or about myself. It's not really a self-portrait. It's just me sitting with those thoughts. And it took me 4 months to make. I technically didn't finish it, but now I like how it looks unfinished. It was just a complete, I didn't know what was going to happen with it. It turned out cool, and I'm happy about that. But if I were trying to make work to sell, and that was my artistic process, which it is my default artistic process, that's not a profitable model for sales because it took me 4 months to make it, and I could probably sell it for $1,000. You know what I mean?
It's funny, too, because this is a really interesting difference that I think me and you had that I think I didn't understand for a long time, and that maybe neither of us did.
I didn't understand it.
Where I think that when we first started talking about art making and collaborating and stuff, I feel like I was pushing you to make your art into commodities. I wanted you to make products.
Yeah.
Almost. Because the way I think about art, I'm thinking about how it will look, not in its sketchbook or in concept or anything like that. I'm thinking about how it will be presented on a wall or shrink wrapped, or how I could distribute this, or all. Those are the things that I am preoccupied with.
Yeah.
And I think I projected that onto you, where I think I wanted you to be like that, or I thought for a while that people who weren't like that, or I don't know. I thought that I was an ideal.
Well, I think art school and being in a capitalist arts society, which you are if you're an artist that lives in the world.
Yeah, in America, I guess.
That's how you thrive. That's how you're going to pay your bills. So that's not a bad frame of mind to be in. But that's actually funny when you're saying that, because one of the first conversations we had about art
was about commodifying art.
Well, no,
on
actually.
Purpose. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Actually, we talked about a lot of stuff that day. But I was going to say a really good example of process artists are performance artists. And the first documentary that we watched together, which is why we started doing collabs, was Marina Abramovic. Yeah. And I was trying to force you to be more conceptual.
Yeah, and I was like, conceptual art sucks.
Yeah.
I don't think that now, but
I think you just didn't have a full understanding of what
I think
it was.
I think so. And it's funny too, because at the time I think I kind of felt like you were more of a conceptual artist, or that was where your inspiration lied, but
yeah.
Now we're discovering maybe that isn't even true. That's more, conceptual art is more adjacent to process-focused art.
Yeah, because process art can be anything. It could be doing portraits of people. I don't know, if you're doing a portrait and it's a commission, and what you're really doing, actually maybe a commission's a bad example, but if you're really, really focused and fulfilled by the experience of making it, that is process art. Process-focused art, I guess. Process art specifically is
more scientific, psychological?
Not necessarily. It's actually a currently evolving term. But something adjacent to that is arts-based research, which I actually just found a Wikipedia page for last night, so I'm not an expert on this at all. But apparently,
We'll be soon.
Hopefully. One of the main authorities on this, apparently, is a current professor at Lesley University in Cambridge, which happens to be the school that I recently dropped out of, that I'm planning on returning to. And it's the idea of harnessing the tool of process art, to get insight in a very broad sense on your state of humanity, or your way of being, or the way that you process problems. Something to make this, kind of put it into simpler terms in the way that I understand it, or the way that I think about it anyway, because I have thought about these things, I just didn't know that there were names for them. if you have ever kept a journal before and you thought nothing of it, just wrote down some bullshit, and then like 5 years later you looked at it and you're like, oh, that makes sense. Like, I can see this person from a removed point of view. It's like doing that with things that are harder to put into words. Like what I was saying earlier about sitting with a thought or a feeling that would be hard to describe and trying to make a piece of work just working through that feeling and almost giving yourself a therapy session, like just sitting with it, practicing mindfulness and just really working the paint, working the canvas without caring how it's going to look and without being anxious about whether it's sellable or whether it's the composition is good or whether it's technically good, because that's not really the point. It's not about anybody else. The audience is yourself, which I think when we talk about audience with artwork, it's almost unheard of to think that the audience could be somebody that isn't you, because that is talking about unsellable work a lot of the time, unless you're famous enough or influential enough to make work like that and there's still a demand for it. Like working that slowly or working that intensely or working that emotionally, or making art that sometimes you look at it and there's not even a visible message to an audience that doesn't know you. That doesn't make any sense if you're making art as a commodity. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. It's interesting to think about, because I guess I didn't realize that difference was so fundamental and that it was even there a lot of the time. Because I consider myself an artist, and I guess I didn't question it beyond that. I was just like, I'm an artist. I make work. That's what it is. But the reasons why you make work are really important to your practice.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of some of the stuff that we talked about with Kat on a previous episode.
Which specifically?
The idea of what the term artist means.
Oh, yeah. It was a really interesting conversation.
Yeah.
This also reminds me, too, of even talking more about Marina Abramovic. The documentary in question was the one, The Artist is Present, which was, as you know, when she did this performance where she sat in the gallery.
In MoMA, I think.
In the MoMA or something, and made this eye contact with the viewer of the art, our guests, or the patron, or the person that would, just these people waiting in line to look at Marina Abramovic in the eyes.
Yeah.
And I think that was super cool too, because that was a really interesting example of a high level, cutting edge, contemporary artist making something that is, in a sense, processed, focused, and conceptual, collaborating with a fucking institution like the MoMA to commodify something process focused and immaterial, and
involving the viewer in the process, which is maybe what was the most powerful part of that piece.
So that's really cool, because it's like this beautiful, interesting process, like documentary about Marina and her team and all the how she, it was like cool, like it was like a cool art documentary, but it's also a fucking really cool example of the arts economy working, or of a conceptual artist like successfely navigating a capitalist system.
Well, here's another thing.
In a way, it's a really so it's fucking really profound in that way too.
Well, another thing too, I think, is that there is intrinsic value in vulnerability and in honesty about your feelings. So, for example, something that we did, the letter project, which I don't remember if we've talked about this in the podcast already, but have we talked about this in the podcast already?
Maybe in passing. I have no idea. Probably.
Well, that was one of the first projects that we did, and that was process-focused work. Like, we weren't making that to sell that. We were making that to almost have a visual conversation. I don't know what we were planning on doing with it, actually.
Who the fuck knows?
Like, I don't know what the goal was, but...
If we haven't talked about it, there were 10 drawings, 5 each, basically, and we would remix each of the 5 every time they were exchanged.
We'd mail them to each other while we were in lockdown. Yeah,
and each time we received a pack of the drawings, which we would draw over them. So it was 5 brand new drawings, 10 brand new drawings through each exchange, where the one below it was essentially covered.
Yes.
It was like a graffiti wall.
Yeah.
It was like 10 graffiti walls that we were just fucking obliterating and recreating.
Yeah, cutting up, burning, soaking in water. Yeah,
and it was basically, I'd say it was taking 5 days average.
To rotate?
For each, Yeah,
probably.
Counting the mailing process, where the post office would deliver it.
Yeah.
So all together, it was each exchange was about a week, maybe.
And that is something that, although we weren't thinking about the end product really, we were thinking about making it, sharing the experience of making it, and documenting it, which is process art. That is what that is. You're documenting the process of doing and sharing that doing with another person, which isn't required for process art, but it was happening. And what resulted was essentially a visual journal of things we didn't even know that we were going through. Like, I mean, this is a little personal, but we started dating shortly after that, and you can see that in that work, like the development of our relationship. And also, we were going through lockdown. Like, we didn't know what was going to happen with that, and there was a lot that was visually referencing coronavirus, politics, different things that we were having, like insecurities about like roommate situations or friends or whatever.
Interpersonal affairs.
Yeah, there was a lot that was being documented that was part of the process and almost like a snapshot of life at that time that you wouldn't have been able to get from a journal entry or from a photograph because we didn't know that it was happening.
Yeah, and as far as Corona goes too, it was this deeply introspective thing happening with the art throughout that because, you know, most people were forced to stay in their homes for this like extended period of time. Mm-hmm. And for us, that actually ended, or we kind of stopped the exchanges of the letters during the Black Lives Matter movement during the summertime.
Yeah. Because
we were both we were going out and, you know, bearing witness and participating in some of these things happening in Boston and other places.
Yeah.
So, and we kind of stopped doing that also because we started seeing each other in person.
Yeah.
So those two things happening at the same time. So, along with the letter project, there were all these interpersonal and deeply personal things being documented, but also a lot of existential, political, and global things that we were experiencing too.
And the thing about that,
go ahead. Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say is when you're talking about art as commodity, that is a collection of, what is it, like 80 images now?
Yeah.
That could theoretically be an art show. It could be something you sell tickets to. It could be a book. It could be merch. It is merchandisable, it's valuable, and people care. Not to, like, fluff up our project, but just to say as an example, like, if anybody were to make a bunch of work that was exploratory like that, once it is a collection, that has value. It's just not something you can shrink wrap and sell as an individual piece without a lot of backstory. Like, the person looking at it has to understand the value of what they're looking at. And
that's why I think we've been a part of the reason we, like, on a personal note, have been having such a fucking difficult time publishing it. and commodifying it, because it's such a, like, you know, publishing and editing and formatting a art book, that's such like a soulless process.
It's true.
And selling it and figuring out how we're gonna make money and distribute it and all this bullshit, it's fucking so evil. But
well, I guess that's the thing that,
because I guess to be transparent, that's what's happening with that project. Is we finished it, this beautiful thing, we made a few different test prints of the book, and it looks awesome.
Yeah.
And we love it, and we're not totally happy with it, which is why, you know, we're still editing it.
It'll come out eventually.
But it's like, fuck.
Well, I guess that's the thing, is like when you dig so deeply like that, like, all right, picture, for example, you, the listener, are in art therapy sessions, or you're in treatment or something, and the therapist has you do like a mind map of people that are close to you, or draw an island that represents your sexuality, or whatever stuff that they have you do in treatment. I'm speaking from personal experience too. Now imagine you're done with that, you've gotten your lesson from it, you're like, wow, I learned XYZ thing about myself.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I didn't know the road did that. That was really anyway, I'm driving. But now imagine you have to go stand up in front of a crowd of people and explain what you drew. What the fuck? Like, that's the reason that they have you do those exercises, is to capture those things that are hard to articulate, those things that are hard to understand. So writing a foreword to something like that is really difficult, because you're not expressing things you decided to say. You're not sitting there doing a portrait of someone and it's like, this flower represents this, and this thing in the background is supposed to show you what this person's thinking. You're not a painter that's fucking making this stuff 400 years ago and having other people analyze it for you. This is you digging as deeply as you can into concepts you don't even fully understand that you're feeling yet, and then showing them to someone else and trying to explain it. And it's really interesting as a research tool, but it's almost impossible to explain unless you sat with it for a while. which I think is a beautiful process.
And I think what's so important to note too, that is like kind of, sorry, we're having a little bit of an intense road situation here with highways and exits and all that.
I figured that.
That might have been it. Whatever, fuck it. I just was looking at the signs and there's some town names I don't even fucking recognize, so I didn't know if, and I didn't recognize that. Anyway, whatever. But like, as far as, and like that's such an important point to make, because it really highlights the fact that like we're in such a decentralized arts economy right now too, with Instagram and like, galleries like arguably, fading in relevance, and like how we don't necessarily need a publisher, distributor, or a manager, or an agent, or these people to make us into artists. We can just be artists on our own.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is what you're talking about too, being able to write about your art, being able to present it, being able to give artist talks, like being able to get up on a stage or to write a book. Like those things don't make you an artist. There are people that do those things that are not artists, that do those as a trade.
Yeah.
Motivational speakers, or whatever, but like, or teachers or professors or whatever. Like what we're talking about is being a communicator.
Yes.
Or a publisher. And it sucks, because I think that kind of drives some people away from art making or from expressing themselves, is because they think that what being an artist, I think if I had to pick in this moment what I think a true artist is, I would say what you were talking about, this process-based art, and like really digging deep and expressing things in a non-verbal way and not worrying about writing a fucking essay on it.
Yeah.
Like I think that's true art. Like right now, maybe I'll have a different opinion later, but I mean, and I think that a lot of people need that, and I think a lot of people would love to be that and to do that, and I think that is. And it is an important and life-giving part of being a human being.
That's the thing that I think is so beautiful about it. Is like, if this is like what I'm talking about, the idea of process art. Yes, it's like Dada art. It's surrealist. Maybe
abstract
not
expressionists.
Yes, it's expressionism, but it's also a treatment tool that they use for toddlers. Everyone is born with this ability. It's just the idea of, I think, I keep using the word capitalist, but I guess what I mean is I do mean capitalism, but to make it a little bit less political, the idea of trying to figure out a way to shrink wrap that during the creative process almost chokes you, and I think it can be a lot of pressure. Like, it's like, the only thing I can think to compare it to right now, maybe it's because we're driving past Brandeis at this moment, but it's like being 17 and trying to write college essays and knowing that your whole future rides on what you're writing versus just writing a short story.
Yeah, and people are like, and my grandma died and I was diagnosed, and like this horrible and deeply important part of their lives.
That they're just commodifying.
Packaging it into this this like shiny, beautiful essay that some asshole in a registrar's office is going to decide whether or not you're a fucking asshole, or if you deserve to go to this
Well,
way.
I think we do that to ourselves as artists, especially in the fine arts, of like, I want to dig deep, I want to make work that means something, I want to be like Frida Kahlo, I want to make things that express where I'm coming from. But we're thinking about how other people will think of those things before we finish it. And it's like, imagine if you brought that energy to a therapy session. Like, you can't do that. You have to sit with your feelings and know that you're the authority on your work and that the outcome doesn't matter. It's the fact that you did that and you were raw and you made that work, and then you can figure out what you want to do with it after.
Yeah, and I don't want to beat to death my point about like communicators and stuff, and how being a communicator is different than being an artist. Like, people talk about that with science online, right?
Yeah.
Where we think about Bill Nye, the science guy.
Yeah.
Bill Nye, the science guy, might have been a scientist or studied science at some point in his life. But right now, at this point in time, he isn't in a fucking lab fucking around with beakers and experimenting and shit.
Yeah.
He's a guy that probably has a team of researchers and writers that help him come up with content that is science-oriented, and he communicates that. I'm sure he knows about science and shit, but he's not a scientist.
Yeah.
He's a fucking science communicator.
Yeah.
Jerry Saltz, a very popular art critic and writer. He has talked about how he was a writer in his past and he has some art experience, but he isn't a career artist. He's a career art communicator. He's an art critic. You know what I mean? And thinking about being like Frida Kahlo. I want to be like Frida Kahlo. Everyone does, you know?
Yeah.
But Frida, I'm sure she was a great communicator or writer or something. I'm sure she was very articulate. I have no idea. Probably. But when she was making all these beautiful, harrowing, amazing works, I don't think she wasn't writing an Instagram bio or preparing for a Zoom talk on what the fucking the My Birth painting means. And like she was probably just in the weeds. She was in this shit. Yeah. She was in her fucking hospital bed with a lap easel, paint, you know.
And that's what so many people admire about her, is that she was unapologetic. She knew what she was trying to say, and she was doing it.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe that's a little counterintuitive to the whole topic of process versus product, but she wasn't making a product. She was making work. And I don't think that being a communicator is any lesser. I don't think being but being someone who makes work for the sake of making it is any lesser. I think that it's a Venn diagram of skill sets.
Yeah.
Where you fall in that, knowing where you fall in that is a huge tool. Because I think, speaking of my own personal experience, I didn't know any of this shit about myself until really recently. That's why I've been struggling writing this art talk to bring it back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Because when we met and we were talking about making work, we were like, we're both artists. We both care about this very much. And I was like, yep, we're on the same page.
Yeah, right.
And like, we are, but...
What does that mean? Yeah.
What does that mean? And if you... We've talked before about having difficulty sharing a studio and how everybody's art making process is different.
Yeah.
But putting a name to why it's different can help you further your work and maximize your potential.
Yeah, and like, it's interesting too, because to bring this even to a different place, or back to Frida too, like, and we think about her legacy and everything we know about her, and even talking about some points you've made in the past about how museums selling tickets are making this vision and this larger than life lionized idea of what an artist is.
Yeah.
And talking about being a communicator and all of these things, is that like what we know about Frida and who she is to us, and like coffee mugs with her face on it and stuff, that probably wasn't who she was in real life at all. That's a vision of her created in the modern time
that makes money.
Really, and maybe in a sad way, it's kind of a bastardization of who she is.
Yeah.
She's a fucking communist.
Yeah.
Like,
dude, when I worked at the museum, we had a Frida exhibition, and this isn't even to talk shit on anybody, because I guess this is just the way that it is, but people used to come in Frida costumes, like little stick-on eyebrows and stuff.
Oh, really?
And it was like, can you imagine? Like, imagine if you died and like 100 years from now, people were dressing up with like a wig to go to your shows.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so far removed.
Yeah,
and it's fine.
I can see the appeal of doing it, but it does seem kind of awkward or bad taste.
Yeah, there's a lot of adjectives you could use for that. It was definitely a yikes moment, but
yeah, that's tough.
mean, that's just, I don't know, maybe that's a different point, but I think
it's definitely a larger point.
Well, I guess
there's definitely a lot that could be its own episode. Yeah, that type of idea thing.
Well, if you're going into art making and you're in the studio with this nascent little idea and a blank canvas in front of you, and people don't know your name yet, people don't know your work yet, you don't even know what you're trying to say, and you're aspiring to that, you're 100 years ahead of where you should be, and that's fine, and it's perfectly okay, and not just perfectly okay because it's something lesser, but perfectly okay and beautiful to be at the beginning of a concept and to not know where it's going to end. And you have to kind of let yourself do that, like floating down the river, letting yourself wind up where you're going to be, because otherwise you're not letting yourself go on that adventure with yourself, and you're not allowing for growth. You're just going to continue to go through different aesthetic phases that you chose if you maintain that much control. It's like developing an intimate relationship with yourself. You can't tell another person how you want the relationship to go, and you can't do that with your own heart either.
Yeah, and it's kind of sad too, because when you focus on commodifying yourself and painting this like kind of like bootstraps American, come from nothing into this beautiful, powerful, story. Yeah. Like, you're kind of robbing yourself of the process. Mm-hmm. Because like the journey is the fascinating part. That is the beautiful part, and we're in it now.
Yeah.
Neither of us are famous.
Yeah.
I'm not a famous person. Neither are you.
Yeah, no.
We're not fucking rich. We're in the journey.
Yeah.
We're in it. We are within our own stories, and if we start trying to shrink wrap that and shine it up and polish it now, we're not gonna smell the roses.
Not even just
we're not gonna look out the window and look at the horses as we drive by them.
That's true.
We're gonna miss that shit.
Well, not even just that, but it also creates a false sense of failure, because that shit doesn't sell. Nobody wants to hear the failure story.
Yeah, right.
And the failure story is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, that has value to you. Like, I don't know, nobody really... I mean, there are people that do. There are obviously people that take care of kids and stuff, but learning to walk. If you didn't do that and didn't fall on your face a bunch of times as a little kid and have all these experiences that were probably so frustrating and so grueling and broke your little heart that you don't even remember now, you wouldn't be able to run, you know? Like, it... And how would you do anything else?
Imagine if you were like a baby that didn't ever learn how to walk. Like, no one ever taught you.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe that's a bad
I'm just
example.
kidding.
Like, maybe that's
I'm sure the listener understands.
I you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Not that you're any lesser if you can't walk. That's a different point. But
It's okay. We
you know what I'm
totally
saying?
Get it.
You have to go through the learning stages to get to a point where you feel confident, and you have to get past a point where you can feel confident to do something new and to do something innovative. And doing things that are innovative and new and groundbreaking maybe shouldn't be your first goal.
It's like cartwheels to backflips.
Yes.
It's like a sport, dude.
Or like comparing it to skating. Like, we've talked about this before of like, you have to learn how to ollie before you can like fucking film and edit for Nike, you know?
Right, yeah. And like a lot of the advanced things people try with athletic things would seriously fucking injure you if you didn't have decades of experience building up to these magnum opus things.
Yeah.
And like, you may not get injured trying to write a manuscript, but like you really can injure your fucking self-image.
Yeah.
If you're gonna, whatever. I don't know. Yeah,
this is a good point.
Yeah.
But I think to bring it back a little bit.
Yeah, let's reel it in.
Yeah, we've made this point.
Fuck this point.
Fuck this point. I think where we differ, because I think we definitely agree on this, and I mean, we probably agree. I don't know. I think that what you do is valid, and I really admire it. Like, I've talked about that before. Like,
love you.
I love you too. But you're someone who's able to make work at a rate that you can sell work at a rate that supports you, and that's awesome. And the way that I make my work, from a financial standpoint, maybe would be considered lesser because I can't do that. Like, I will never be able to support myself on what I'm doing unless I get famous first, which, I mean, God knows if that'll fucking happen, but it's not really the point to me, because what is the point and what I really value and what I think is incredible... Huh?
Oh, sorry, I was pointing at the stop sign. I'm a backseat driver.
No, it's okay. What I think is incredible about that is, for example, like the pieces of work that I've been making in the last year, I had no idea that they were going to happen. Like, I didn't know that if I sat with this idea or this feeling that this collage would come out and I'd be able to see the XYZ consistent themes that show me how I really feel about this. Like, suddenly I'm giving myself answers that I didn't even know I was asking the questions to, you know? And if you do that over and over, back to back, that facilitates personal growth in an accelerated way. Like, you don't have to wait the 5 years to read your old journal entry and see from where you've come. And you can do that with that work, obviously, but maybe it's only 4 months. And in that lens, 4 months is a really short window of time.
Yeah.
And I think what really interests me in terms of, like, career path, I guess, is harnessing that and exploring that, because that's a very new... I mean, it's probably not a new concept, really, in the art world, but in terms of, like, science and psychology, art therapy is a relatively new field, and the people that supply the science that backs art therapy are researchers and artists, which is where we come to art-based research, which I just found out about and I think is really interesting. Yeah. I don't know. Really cool.
This is good shit.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm a
so.
little bit at a loss for words for some reason.
It's because you thought I was going to get hit by that car.
Oh, maybe a little bit. I did think we were going to get hit by a passing car a few minutes ago.
It's okay.
I
Sorry.
kind of forgot about that. That's okay.
Just continue talking.
No, it's totally cool. No,
I'm a
I
scary
like that.
driver. My bad.
Sometimes. Don't worry about it.
It's because I'm thinking about other shit.
Wow. Wow.
But yeah, I don't know. And I think we talked about this sort of on the episode with Kat. If you haven't listened to it, go tune into that. Kat, she makes art under the name Kapakawa. It's awesome. We interviewed her last episode. And she was talking about the idea of the term artist and how, to her, that means... Actually, I don't want to paraphrase her, but like she was saying essentially that it comes in hand with the idea of like marketing your work, selling it, and essentially doing what we were talking about you were doing, of like making it a career path and figuring out a way to keep that supply and demand in balance, maintaining that stasis, and working in a way that feeds you and also generates money to help you stay alive. Which makes sense. That is legitimately nuts and bolts, a very real way to make a career in art. But I think also somebody that does something less like that is more kind of working through different things, or like Kat was saying, being a storyteller, or sharing a narrative, or expressing an idea, or exploring an idea without an intended audience and making work for the sake of making it. Those are all artists too. And I don't think that those artists are as... Not that they're not as supported, because there are definitely career paths for all those people, but I think that it's a hard thing to find names for. Like, I think in my experience, I've been taking art classes since I was 2 years old, and I didn't really realize that these were options. You know? Maybe that's my fault. I don't know. But
well, yeah, I think it's difficult too, because I think too, I think if you are the type of artist that is choosing my type of path, where you're trying to sell shit and, you know, be, you know, whatever, maybe money, goal oriented, whatever.
Yeah.
That's like kind of what I want to do. Like, I think that just saying I'm an artist is bad, because you're going to poison yourself against that term. Because how is it that me failing to make money or sell shit or shittily advertising or fumbling a networking opportunity, why the fuck would that make me a bad artist?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the art.
What the fuck does any of that have to do with art?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that just I don't know, dude. Like, if you make a fuckload of money, I don't give a shit if you did it selling art, or if you did it making art or teaching art. Well, to exclude teaching, but like all this shit about selling, and if it has something to do with art, great. But like, you're a successful capitalist. You're a successful entrepreneur. You're not a success. Like, that's
you're a business owner.
You're running a small business, and and I'm not saying that's wrong or right or political or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not art making, and I don't like. I'm not talking about right or wrong, because this is what I do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like this is something that I try to tell myself too, that, you know, like, if I want to be a great artist, that's within, I can attempt to do that. I don't necessarily need school. I don't need an online class. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like,
I think you're right.
I think to try to simplify this point, I think that it would really, really help the artist or creative entrepreneur to start categorizing the hats that they want to wear.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You want to be an artist? Great. Go paint. You want to, you know, learn about marketing and advertising online? Go ahead, read a book about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You want to learn more about networking and being charismatic, cool guy. Yeah. That it says the smart thing. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Start a podcast. but it's important to just to recognize that these are all different categories.
Yes.
These are different disciplines. These are different things. If you're great at all of them, maybe you could be a great artist. But like, it's kind of like in companies and like corporate structure, how there's a CEO, there's a CFO, there's a COO. There's all kinds of different bosses.
Or to even put it in another lens, which is where I think I got fucked up. Say you're 17 years old and you're trying to pick your major. What the fuck are you going to choose? Yeah. If you want to be an artist and then you go into fine arts and they're teaching you how to oil paint and you already kind of know how to do that, like, yes, more lessons will always be helpful, but are you frustrated because they're not teaching you how to run a market? Or you don't know how to price your work? Because that's not what you signed up for. And I don't think I knew that. I just thought that my school was bullshit and everything sucks and I'm going to drop out. But maybe I was looking under the wrong categories.
Well, I think that's definitely symptomatic of a way bigger problem.
Yeah, there's a lot
which
of
is a problem with our
It's not every 17-year-old is a fucking idiot. It's like that, and also maybe talk to your advisor.
And honestly, too, I think it comes down to as well. I think it's about sticking to your values and sticking to your guns and what you truly, you know, believe, or what change you want to affect in the world. Because if you want to research and learn about the brain and, like, you know, these things you're talking about, process art, like, a business major probably isn't the move. Like learning how to taking a marketing class or whatever, or like maybe that's not the right thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or if you want to, literally, like my uncle Gary, who we've talked about, Gary Huntress on Instagram. I'm sure he would love to sell a painting or to teach a class or to be in a gallery, but he isn't really doing that. But what he's doing is he takes fucking online classes, he reads books, he practices all the time, and dude, he could make a fucking master fucking forgery of a John Singer Sargent painting, and I don't know if I could tell the difference.
Yeah.
Like, he's just a fucking class A oil painter.
Yeah.
He's a fucking great artist. And like I said, I'm sure he'd love to sell some paintings or do whatever. Maybe he is doing that and I just don't know about it.
Well,
But like it seems like his primary concern is to just be a fucking awesome painter.
Yeah.
And he's doing that. You know what I mean? And if that's what you want, I think he might have I don't know exactly what he does for a job or anything. Aside from that, I don't see him a ton, but like whatever. But sorry, but you know, like that's his goal, and he's doing great at it. I'd also keep in mind he's an adult man in his 60s, I think, so he's had a lot more time than we have.
Yeah.
To get good at this stuff,
which is also important, comparing yourself to masters.
Yeah, you know,
give yourself room to be 25.
25. Yeah. Yeah.
And another thing too, just as an aside, do I have a destination? Am I just going?
We have no destination.
All right, fuck it. I'll just take
I don't
this
even know
exit.
what town we're in.
I don't either. But also, if you're someone who maybe you're not as strong at painting or drawing, and you want to be involved in the arts economy, but you're really good at selling work, or you're really good at talking someone up, or you're really good at writing statements, maybe you could be a curator, or you could be a gallerist, or you could help someone manage sales, or be a marketing manager.
Be an independent art stealer.
That is so valuable to the art world as well.
Fucking antique store.
Yeah.
You can do all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
Sell shit.
None of these things are any better or worse than the other, and I think there's almost a sort of ethical hierarchy to when people say artist, like...
Yeah, because I don't know, dude, like, if you want to be a designer, do you want to design the fucking packaging for, like, a sports drink?
Yeah.
Do you want to fucking make fucking signs for a fucking laundromat?
Yeah.
In Newton?
Make t-shirts for bands?
Yeah, like, there's a million different things with design, ranging from the most boring fucking thing you can imagine to the most interesting, cool, museum-ass New York gallery shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's a big fucking range, but that's also probably an even bigger range when it comes to the industry surrounding these things.
Yes.
Think about it, the music, I don't know a ton about the arts industry, believe it or not, but like, think about the music industry, for example. Think about something like the fucking Boston Garden, dude. How many, there's probably 1,000 employees there every fucking game or concert, dude.
Yeah.
Like, if they didn't maintain that building even when there wasn't shows and it was closed, it would fucking collapse in on itself.
Yeah.
Because it's a massive structure that requires all kinds of fucking maintenance. There are people that need to clean, I don't know, like serve snacks, security, door, like they're like, to have a Bruins game requires hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah.
To make it happen.
And I mean,
even maintaining the building.
My history is a good example of that, because I worked at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and when I was working there, this was my own naivete. I didn't really understand how things worked, I think, because I'd never had a museum job before. But I was so jazzed, because I was like, I am going to promote my art. I'm going to get to know the right people. I'm going to meet the curators. But I was working a sales position, and I learned a lot from doing that. I think it was a very good experience for me, and I liked my coworkers a lot, and it was a positive experience, mostly overall. But I was doing sales and marketing, which is a skill set that I have because of doing markets and selling merch, and I worked at a bank in the past too, I guess, but I don't know. It's like... hireable. But on paper, a lot of people would look at the fact that I work at the museum, and they're like, you must be killing it. Like, you're a famous artist.
Oh,
and
you're
I was like,
in the art world.
Yeah, and it's like, not
Work
necessarily.
at Guitar Center and be in the music biz.
I know.
I'm just kidding, sorry. It was probably a cool job in its own right, but
it's not all the same. Like, I think when you say artist, everyone's like brick wall, white gallery with the exposed beams,
white
ivy
cube.
up the side. Yeah, like you're in Brooklyn, rubbing shoulders with whatever the fuck, elbows.
Rubbing all kinds of elbows. Anybody's elbows.
Rubbing knees.
Whoever.
Rubbing knees of Picasso.
I don't give a shit.
And I was one of those people that thought that. So maybe what I'm talking about right now is my own learning process and exploring the art world a little more. But what I'm saying is, I did get to be in a museum every day. I did get to meet a lot of artists. I met security guards at the museum that were artists. There's I forget the exact number, but something like 500 people that work there with catering and the cafeteria people and security and tutoring and arts education and all the different departments. That's just one museum. Like, there's so many. And even expanding that, not in the museum world, there's art teachers, there's people that teach in schools, there's people that do workshops out of their houses. Like, you can crochet hats and sell them on Etsy. Like, there's so many ways to be an artist.
Moral of the story, you can be anything you want to be when you grow up.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, sorry.
I like that. And you're always growing up until you're dead.
Yeah, I forget how we got into this thread, but...
I don't know. This turned into an inspirational talk.
This is we're motivational. This is the Boston Motivational Speaker Podcast. Dude. Like, there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned here. I think we originally made this episode just to kind of document some of these interesting thoughts you're having about process. Can I quantify that can I just say process-based art? Is that how would you refer to that?
I've always called it,
concept.
On my own, I've called it process-focused art making.
Process-focused art making.
But when I was looking it up on Wikipedia, I saw that it's referred to often as process art. I'm not really sure if they're different. I have to do more research on it. But I know process art is a fine arts movement, like...
from the 60s or whatever.
From the 60s, but still prevailing now. That, I guess, even an example that was listed on Wikipedia is Jackson Pollock's paintings. Long story with Jackson Pollock. I have beef with Jackson Pollock, but yeah, that's a good example because he wasn't doing anything representational. Any abstract expressionist artist is a good example of that because you're exploring a feeling. The process is teaching you something. The process has value versus it being a thing that you're like if you were building a cabinet or something, maybe you really enjoy the process, but you're building a cabinet. Like, there's a right and wrong way to do it.
It's process a bit utilitarian.
Art. Yeah, like I think the linchpin of the concept is if you can fail.
Got it. Right. Okay.
Which is why it's a really good therapeutic tool.
Right. Like, there is a difference between a structure that is failing. You can fail at making a chair.
Yes.
Like an intended chair cannot function correctly. A painting cannot fail.
It depends. You can fail at doing a realism portrait.
Yo, look at where the fuck we are right now. That's Mount Auburn Cemetery.
How did we wind up
We're
here?
in fucking Cambridge.
I literally just drove no goal.
This is so fucking funny. Would you pull into that Star Market when we get up to it?
Yeah, do you have
I
to
get a fucking pee so
too.
fucking bad. All right.
How long have we recorded?
How the fuck did we end up here? That's so funny. 47 minutes.
Wow, we made a whole episode.
We should really make an episode about Jackson Pollock.
Oh,
I think that would be a really fun one.
That'd be fun, I guess.
Anyway.
I hate him so much.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about Lee Krasner the whole time.
She's definitely in a very important part of his story.
Yeah. But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
I think maybe if I could give any kind of takeaway to this, because like what I've been thinking and the reason this has been on my mind is I, through happenstance, wound up in a situation where I've been asked to kind of reflect on myself and the reasons why I do what I do versus just doing. And something that I've concluded about myself personally is I run from that a lot. When I am feeling out of control, I respond by doing. And sometimes, both in therapy and in life and in your intimate relationships and in your art, because your art is an intimate relationship you're developing with yourself, you need to sit with your concepts and have days where you're not doing anything profitable. You need to have, like when you're a student in school, you have days that you spend in the library and you might not be writing your paper, you might be reading for 6 hours. But those things feed what you're going to make. There is no output without input, or else you're regurgitating things that already exist. And if you're trying to do something that is groundbreaking or new, even if it's just new to you, you have to reflect on what has been done before and what you would like to do and what other people are doing and what's happening around you and whatever concept it is that maybe you're dwelling on, because the first draft is never the last.
Yeah.
And I think that is how you identify which hats you're wearing and what kind of artist you are, or what kind of... Maybe we should think of another term besides artist when we're talking about this, but what kind of creator you are, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful thing to do. And also, too, like, I think we might have a little bit different of a perspective on this because we're not necessarily college-aged at this point in time.
Yeah.
Even though, what does that really mean? Like, we're not an 18-year-old out of high school.
Yeah.
So if you are that and you're listening and you're thinking, fuck, I need to decide what kind of creator I am or what kind of hats I want to wear, just don't.
Well, that's, I guess, what I'm saying.
Don't think that. Like, I think, but I'm just trying, I guess I'm just pointing out, maybe needlessly,
you're right.
that this is better suited advice for us. Like,
no.
this is advice that would benefit us, but I could totally see myself being 18 and radically misunderstanding this. Yeah.
I do, yeah, you're right. Because that's not, I think what I'm saying does apply to that person, but I didn't say it succinctly. I think the most important thing you can do for your work is doing your work. And then thinking about your work and what you've done and seeing what your skills are and which ones you're good at naturally and what you want to improve on or what your goals are. Identify who you are so you can see what you want to work on. Same thing, like I keep relating this to therapy, which psychology and art are my two big passions. I really enjoy the scientific aspect of art making, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but it's the same thing. Like if you went to go to a therapist, not assuming that you had like some severe thing you needed treatment for, but if you're just going for general maintenance and to work on yourself, the first thing you would do is identify, okay, am I sleeping a lot? Am I stressed out in this situation? Like, do I have a bad relationship with XYZ person and why? Like, what are the things that you want to improve on? What are the things that, are you really good at meeting deadlines? Are you really, your skill set is really centered around this thing that you love doing? Like, who are you and where do you want to get to and what do you need to do to get there? Because it's not really about a label. It's not about a major. You're not trying to fit into a box that exists already. As a creator, you are creating your own box. You're bringing to the table and bringing to society, this is who I am. And however they respond to that, that is not your problem. Which I'm giving myself this advice. This is not shit that I do, but I would like to do it.
Yeah.
So maybe that's, I don't know. Does that apply more? I feel like it does.
No, I think that's awesome. I honestly think this is a really great episode.
I do too.
It's a really good talk.
I wish we recorded the first hour and a half of this conversation.
Yeah, that's true. That's okay. I think I don't know. Thinking back, I think we covered a lot of what you had already talked about.
Yeah.
I think this is really, really helpful, I think, to talk about. I think to just discover these differences in the way that me and you were both individually approaching art.
It's so
I think
crazy
it's really
because it's taken a year to emerge.
Yeah, and we've said this off recording, but this podcast is what has caused us to notice this.
Yeah.
That was like the most jumbled sentence, but like
Well,
this podcast has revealed this difference in the two of us that was there the whole time that we weren't really able to identify. And I think it's really amazing because if this podcast was just two people that think like me, it wouldn't be helpful to people like you.
Yeah.
So it's really awesome that you're, because like I think that I might be, my vision of what it is to be a successful artist is the conventional one, which is I don't actually believe this, but like, I want to make money,
yeah,
and be known and this and that. But I think it's really good to just actually, I don't know.
Well, I think it's also
insert
true
everything we just said here.
You can be multiple kinds of artists too, because even as we're saying this, I think the reason maybe that the podcast for us specifically illuminated this is because we are sitting with what we are and what we've made. We're not in the studio right now. We're not making, we're not hiking, we're not doing, which is what we spend a lot of time doing stuff, just in our own friendship. But we're reflecting right now and talking about what we really believe. And I didn't go into this podcast knowing that's what we were going to do. I don't think either of us did.
Yeah.
And I didn't go into this with any expectations of what it was going to look like. And every time that we've tried to do that or write an episode beforehand, we have not had a conversation like this. There have been so many episodes, just full transparency, that we just fucking, both of us had a meltdown in the middle of it. We're like, no, fuck this. Like,
shut it up!
We need to go get coffee or something. This is terrible.
Yeah. There's been some duds.
But that was product-focused podcasting.
Damn, yeah. This is process-focused podcasting.
Yeah. With anything.
Whoa!
I was going to say, though, like, even you, like, if you're saying you identify as a product-focused art maker, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I also don't want you to overlook the fact that you also journal every day and reflect on your work and talk about and think about your work.
Yeah, I don't feel like some kind of, like, money-making robot, like, psychopath.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely don't think I'm that either.
I don't think anybody really is. Even people that are, like, entrepreneurs, hustle grind people, like, they're doing it because they have a reason to do it.
Sure.
And if you're doing that, if you're running a business and you literally opened a store and you're not making anything, you're just selling stuff, maybe you're doing that so you can pay to go to college or for your kids to have food on the table. Like, everybody has
make money.
Yeah, everybody has their human reasons for doing what they're doing. But I think we're also groomed to let go of humanity a lot and to not spend time doing things that only benefit us, and the only people who bear witness to it are us.
Or to sacrifice it for economic value.
Yes. Because it seems like if you're looking at things the way that we're trained to look at things, of like, this is worthwhile because of how much money I can make from it, which we do with a lot of things. Like, for example, this is a totally random one, but the discourse in feminist literature of like the value of unpaid work and housewife responsibilities and gender roles and things like unpaid value. Like how maybe if you were at work and you were a house cleaner and that's worth $15 an hour, but then you work an 8-hour day and you come home and you have to take care of your kids for 6 and nobody gives a shit about that. And it's not considered labor. That is an example of the grooming that we have that I think affects us as artists as well. That's a gender-based one, obviously, but maybe you are only considering your time and what you would charge for your work, or work that you would charge for, and the production of that to be valuable and to be you working on your art. But what if you took a day off and just did what we did today and reflected on all of these things? I consider today me working on my artist talk. I don't have anything to show for it yet, but I will when I go home, more so than I would before. Going to a museum and looking at other people's work, is that you just consuming content and going, haha, that was fun, new Deadpool movie was great? Or are you actually thinking about the things that you're looking at? Like, reflecting on anything that you want to get better at is important. I know people that play sports that sit there and just think about the way that they did what they did, and they're not doing it in the moment, but if they didn't do that shit, maybe they wouldn't get better at it. I don't know. I'm not an athlete, but...
No, you're right. That's game tape.
Yeah.
Reviewing game tape.
Yeah. It's crucial for any kind of practice, is studying what you love.
Yeah.
And I think that is a value that this podcast has brought to me. I hope that other people listening to it also get value out of it, but for me, that's why I'm doing it.
Damn. Wow.
And I also do want to say, I feel like I've really painted a picture in this that I don't just, like, make merch and shit. It's totally not true. Like, I also completely make merch. Earthworm started as a label name. Like, the reason that I make work under Theodora Earthworms now is trying to humanize that a little bit more. But the pieces that I make that are process-focused are a percentage of the work that I make overall. I also sell patches, make zines, make t-shirts, do markets, all that shit. I miss that shit a lot. And the reason that I've leaned into this so much this year is probably because of COVID, which has been a blessing in a lot of ways because I've explored this more. But I'm not immune to this at all.
Yeah, no. And that's another really important thing too, is that, like, it's just how, like, I'm not like a capitalist machine like Elon Musk. Like, that's not what I think I am either. Yeah. Like, I feel I definitely do a lot of things that are process focused. I guess I just didn't really, just exploring that dichotomy is definitely a new mode of thinking about it, but whatever. Yeah. I'm here for it. Fuck it.
Well, I think also if you wanted to expand it more, I have a lot of friends that have talked to me before. I don't know why this is such a specific overlap, but maybe it's what we're talking about. Is I know a lot of people that have been like, I wish I could draw, or I wish I could write. I'm not a creative. I like baking. That's process work. You're working with your hands, you're touching things, you're making something. I guess with baking you can technically fail, but you're doing it for the sake of doing it. Like, why else would you spend 2 hours icing a cake you're going to eat in 20 minutes? It's because you love to do it. You love to bake. And that is valuable.
I would even say that the baking is probably an example of art that is process-based and product-based.
Yeah.
That is that is within the two worlds.
I don't think they're even as separate, because I think, like we were saying with the letter project, you can make a product out of process-focused work.
Right, yeah.
It's just what is important to you.
Or Marina Abramovic.
Yeah. It's what you're valuing while you're doing it.
Yeah.
It's your mindset is what we're talking about, really.
It's stopping and smelling the flowers.
It's not reducing yourself to a dollar sign, is really what it means.
Or a fucking follower count.
Or a pass-fail binary.
Or the completely ambiguous and, like, lackluster analytics of an Instagram post.
I guess what we're talking about is the reason why you make 6 paintings that come out dope and you sell them and you're like, cool, $20, $20, $20. And then you make one painting that sucks and nobody cares about it. And you're like, I'm going to fucking kill myself. Like, I'm done forever. I'm a failure. I shouldn't have gone to art school.
I suck. Yeah.
Like, why is that part of your identity? Because you've been working on the product the whole time. And nobody can take that away from you. That's growth.
Damn.
I don't know. I guess we're hammering the same points now. But
that's okay. Look at that. 59 minutes.
It's pretty good.
Shit. Don't look at my notes. Don't look at the titles of my past voice memos.
Okay. The listener isn't in on this one. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not really either.
It's okay. It's a song.
All right.
Yeah, so this has been the Boston Art Podcast, bi-weekly. Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah, tune in to my upcoming art talk.
Today.
Oh, yeah, today.
Today at 3 or 3:30 p.m. Check Theo's Instagram, probably, for the Zoom link or whatever the fuck it is if you want to go.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're definitely going to do this, but we'll probably just record that artist talk and upload it here.
Yeah.
So if you don't catch it live, one of these days, we'll post it. Maybe
Somehow.
on a day where we forget to record an episode.
Probably.
Dude, yeah, maybe we should save that. All right, cool.
We'll talk about it after.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah, thank you guys. I'm Brian Huntress. Hit me up on Instagram.
Theodore Earthworms. Hit me up on Instagram too.
Yep, easy. You can find him. You're an adult with a smartphone, probably.
Oh, and we have
Figure
an
it out.
Instagram for the podcast. It's the Instagram is Boston Art Podcast. If you are an artist that is interested in being on our show, let us know. Basically, how we do it is the same way. If you've heard the interview that we released with Kat, we're trying to release a whole bunch of them. We have some people lined up for the future.
Mm-hmm.
We're making bi-weekly episodes, so there's no pressure. Whenever you're available, we have a week and a half to do it. Just give us a call, and we'll basically just have a conversation like the one we're having now. Talk about your work and talk about what makes you tick.
Yeah, hit us in the DMs on Instagram, and that'll be that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.